Yeah, so I'll just give a small introduction before we start. And yeah, so hello, a very warm welcome to the VAR show, the show which talks about all the best major football leagues in detail. Today, we are going to continue theme of interviews, and we have Mr. Thorlakur Arnason with us, who is currently the technical director of Hong Kong Football Association. So, first of all, I would like to thank Thorlakur for coming on the show. Thank you and welcome to the show. And I would like to begin by asking you, how are you and what have you been doing these days? And before we go on to that, can I just say that just because it's easier, can I just call you Thor because it's like
Yeah,
Thorlakur is
yeah, yeah.
a syllable.
That's fine.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah. So how are you and what have you been doing these days?
I'm very good. Thanks for having me on the show. Well, actually, now we're on vacation. It's still Chinese New Year, so we start work again tomorrow. Well, I've been here in Hong Kong for just over 2 years, and my main role has been doing a development plan for the next 5 years, and also a strategic plan. So that is finished now, and now like we started implementing these plans half a year ago or 1 year ago, depending on which plan. But of course, COVID has affected it a bit, slowed it a bit down. But still, we have managed to finish a lot of documents through these difficult times because it's always something you can do, although you're not playing football.
Definitely. And you mentioned the Chinese New Year, and the only thing I do not have much stories related to Chinese New Year, except that last year, the last Chinese New Year, everyone was just anticipating, okay, post this, the pandemic probably won't be a lot, but it has gone on for over a year, like compared to last year. And yeah, I mean, like,
Yeah,
how has it been, like, the pandemic in Hong Kong?
I think the main problem is the let's say the fear of the virus because it's so I mean it's so overpopulated the area. So we might have 20, 30 cases a day, but still everything is shut down. So I think that is the problem. The people themselves are extremely careful because SARS happened here in 2002, and they know all the procedures. They're just super good at this. So coming in here as a European, you learn a lot because you've never been through this. I actually, because you're talking about last Chinese New Year, I spent it in Nepal.
Okay.
So I was the optimistic guy. I was like Tintin, went to Nepal and thought, okay, where am I going next? But I haven't traveled since, basically, just over to Iceland for holiday. But I went to Nepal and around Chinese New Year in 2020. Yeah, last year.
Definitely, definitely. And like, you have spent most of your life in Iceland, and like you said, you have been in Hong Kong for only for the past few years. And how did Hong Kong happen? Because Iceland is quite far, and
Yeah.
how did Hong Kong happen to
Well,
you?
yeah. Well, I think it's down to my goal setting. So I've I've I've, I worked as a coach in 1990. So when I was a player, I started to coach very early. And then I'd worked for a long time in the Icelandic FA, and then you communicate with a lot of countries outside Iceland. Did my pro license in Scotland, went to Sweden to coach or to be an academy manager for 2 years, came back to Iceland, and then I felt that I wanted to go abroad again because I've, I've done almost everything in Icelandic football. Been a first team coach, worked for the FA as a national youth team coach, both for boys and girls. Uh, so so I wanted to go out again, and there were some possibilities over in China, in mainland China, as a academy director in the Super League. But it took such a long time, and in the meantime, there was this ad about the technical director's job in Hong Kong. So I just applied for fun. Basically, I was thinking about other things at the same time, but then still no answer from mainland China, and uh, I think it was just 1 hour after the interview with Hong Kong FA, they offered me a contract. So then I had to go. of course. And it's been great actually over here.
And you said like how like you had advertisements about technical director in when you were back home, and I also spoke to, I think it was Michael West, the former Philippines and Mongolia coach. He said when he was in Germany back home, he also had gotten this advertisement. Where does this advertisement come? Because you have a lot of people. It's very like I'm very
Yeah,
curious to know where are these advertisements coming.
I'm not sure where I saw it. I think that it might have been on one of these web pages. Football jobs is one of them, or I don't remember exactly. And to be honest with you, at that moment, I had other options. So, um, but when I spoke to them in the interview, um, I found out that what they were looking for was exactly what I was good at. So I thought I was the right person for the job. So I just stopped thinking about other things and went for it. So it really it was sudden. It was a bit surprising.
Definitely. And was it like for your first time in Asia when you were coming to Hong Kong?
I actually went to Japan in 2018, so a few months before I came here, and that helped me a lot. So it is different. It is, of course, you cannot say that Asia is the same. It's like saying Europe is all the same. It's not. But Asia is definitely totally different from Iceland. Japan was intense. Being in Tokyo, the it's so crowded. There's so much noise, and there's light pollution. It's really intense. So even for me, going from Tokyo to Hong Kong, and Hong Kong is very intense. I thought Hong Kong was pretty easy. So I think I learned a lot about going to Japan, a lot about the culture, the respect for certain things like greetings and food. And it helped me a lot prepare for Hong Kong, although Japan is definitely not like Hong Kong. In Japan, if the emperor says we're going to the left, everybody goes left. Uh, if he wants to go right, or the coach wants to go right or left, everybody follows. In Hong Kong, it's totally different, and especially because of the political situation, there is really difficult to get everybody to go the same way. Of course, in some matters you can, but it's more complicated than definitely Japanese, Korean culture, and even mainland China culture, of course. So it's a mix of Europe and Asia working in Hong Kong.
Different. And like for you, basically, like at least what we perceive from outside, I do not know. You would know better. Like in Iceland, everything is so good. Even football is structured. Everything is structured. They're very
Yeah.
like kind of they're very set, like sorted people. They know what they're doing. And
Yeah.
how was it like like coming to Hong Kong, like you said, because it's not very like everyone is not pulling in the same direction, so probably you may have some way like like some probably some people won't agree with you. So how was it like how did you have to like, was it a shock for you, like because it can be a shock from, because if you come from Iceland, at least what we perceive Iceland to be.
Yes and no, not a shock. I would say if we go back to Iceland, so why is Iceland so strong in football and sports in general is because of the infrastructure. So the youth setup, and not only in football and other team sports and individual sports, is really good. And the government sponsors sports a lot. If you look at the percentage versus GDP, it's really high. It's much higher than in Hong Kong. So the system itself is about, in football in Iceland, is to make use of all the kids because we only have 350,000 people living in Iceland. So it's a very late, there's a very late selection on everything. So we have the same system, same quality of coaches for everybody until maybe when they're 15, 16, 17, 18. It's really late. If you take just other European countries, even Sweden, England, Scotland, they start selecting from the grassroots to elite clubs very early on, 7, 8 years old. So I don't think you can compare the football social system to anything in the world. The Icelandic one, it's so good for Iceland because we need to we need to delay the selection because we are so few. If you go over to Hong Kong, the main difference is that there's so much focus on education. The place is overpopulated, so there's so much competition for for every job in Hong Kong. So as a parent, you need to prepare your kid to be absolutely the best at school, to be able to get a job, to be able to even get an interview. So it's so different. While in Iceland, where you have a lot of small towns, where you need to have like 2 or 3 or 4 roles to so the town can function. So if you are a coach, you are probably the PE teacher, you're a football coach, you're in the church choir, and and something like that. You even might teach swimming also. So you have like 3 or 4 roles because you need to, because there's lack of human resources. So I think the biggest shock for me has been the focus on education. It's like we have really good players still in Hong Kong, but they don't have a choice. The parents are told them when they're 18 or 19, you are going to the UK for university, or you can maybe think about football later. And there's also hierarchy. So there is this ranking system that it made me as a boss in my working place really embarrassed, being called sir, and people putting themselves in a certain position because I'm the boss. Really uncomfortable. So in Iceland and in Europe, you work much more sideways. So of course you will respect your supervisor, but it's totally different. And then I think the working in women's football in Hong Kong was a bit of a shock because it's like going 30 years back from Iceland. So the players need to do a lot themselves to make the club function, or even inside our national teams. So there's a few things that are totally different from the environment I come from in Iceland and in Hong Kong, of course.
I have so many questions to what you answer. Like I can, like every word you said can be a different question, and it can go on for maybe a lot of time. Like,
Yeah, just
yeah, like I wanted, like first thing I think, like which you said that people call you sir, or like that is something okay. Like I think that is out of respect, and it's I think like it's ingrained in not only in Hong Kong, maybe in Japan, India. I can't speak for Indonesia because I have not been there, but Japan, I have not been in Japan also, but I spoke to many people, so even they were saying same
yeah,
thing. In India, where I have been, so it's common. Even Nepal, it's
yeah,
common. I
yeah,
think that I think it's just a cultural thing, and just this is just my uh analysis. I think this is like maybe I not about Hong Kong, but maybe about India, Nepal, and this part is like maybe because going back, although not Nepal, maybe India, because going back they were colonies, so I think it's just like you had to call the hierarchy sir. So I think that
yeah,
kind of has
yeah.
stayed back with time. Maybe now it's more out of respect than maybe out of fear, but I think they just perceive it to be like a sign of respect. I think that part,
Yeah,
although you
I, yeah, I definitely, the good side of it is it's a sign of respect. And there's more respect for the elderly, for example. Well, I'm 51. I'm not one of the elderly maybe, but I feel it's more respect for the elderly to listen to just elderly people here in Hong Kong than in Iceland. This is lacking in Iceland. Respect for people who are 70 plus years old, stopped working and all that. So it's the good side of it is a sign of respect. The bad side of it is not maybe the hierarchy itself, it's the lack of responsibility that other people take because they think the boss or the sir should do it. So when foreigners come into Hong Kong, it's easier for them to climb up the ladder, because when you have a problem in that company, the Europeans or the outsiders, they're used to fixing them themselves. They have a job description, but there's something, if something happens, they'll just sort it out. It's a problem, I sort it out myself. But as here, because the boss is so, he's such a demanding, or you can say as a figurehead in everything, and makes almost all the decision without maybe talking to um, the juniors in the past. So they feel like if you ask them, what do you think? That's like, I don't want to say anything bad, or I don't want to make a mistake saying it in front of others. As in Iceland, I think one of the qualities of this system is that people, they just come with ideas. They might be stupid even, and then okay, we're not going to do this. They're not so afraid of losing face. Like in Chinese culture, this is really strong, both in the mainland and here in Hong Kong, that the locals don't want to look bad in a meeting of 10 or 12 people saying something that does not make sense. So that, of course, leads to very limited dialogue. So I think it's really good. So what I do in my working place, I bring the managers under me into the office, and I come with an idea, and I ask them, what do you think? What's the strengths of it? What's the weaknesses? And they have a dialogue, and then we decide what's the best solution. So we try and error. So it's like, okay, well, if we do this, will it work? No. And everybody agrees on that. And then you come to the conclusion with the group. Of course, you cannot take 20 people into that meeting, but with 3 or 4 managers, it works really well.
No, but again, it
So, and
comes.
it also helped me a lot, because
Yeah,
some of the things I'm thinking, I'm not sure if they are, because if you want to go somewhere, it might be 3 or 4 ideas, and the managers, the local people, they will maybe help me. Hey, Thor, this is not going to work out. So based on our culture, okay, then we'll take another route or whatever.
but again, I think it comes down to the same face, like how you said, like how people don't want to, like be embarrassed of the idea if that is
Yeah,
rejected. But I think it comes down maybe like how you said, like maybe 8 of them are fighting for one position. So if you look stupid with an
yeah, yeah, yeah,
idea, maybe you might
yeah,
lose the job, and maybe you might.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, totally. I mean, this is just, it's like no culture is better than the other. I'm definitely not saying that. I've learned a lot from the culture in Hong Kong, and I learned to, let's say, take middle ground many times. I might, if I was in Iceland, I would just have done it, but I need to get advice from the juniors or the people under me to make it right for the Hong Kong FA, not for me. It's not about me. So yeah, definitely. But it's really interesting. It's been really interesting for me.
Definitely. And like how you said, like how I can see a common theme maybe with Hong Kong, India, and Nepal, because I've been to these three places, like not Hong Kong, but Nepal, India, and like what you're saying about Hong Kong. It's like how studies or maybe your education is primary, like at least
Yeah,
for kids, for from the perspective of the parents. And I want to ask you, like, is it because there is being a footballer is not a profession, or it do not pay as well as probably what education does?
definitely. That's a really good point. I think the parent in these countries, not only Hong Kong, if we first go back to, so there are like 3 groups, 3, you can say, continents or nations who have a lot of professional football players per capita. That's Iceland. We have so many professional football players outside Iceland uh, per capita. It's the old Yugoslavia, it's the Balkans. And if you think about the Balkans, it comes from a rough area. There's a lot of wars going on for a long time. So players wanted to go. We have Brazil, where the players are manufactured on the beaches. So many Brazilian players all over the world. And then you have Africa. And because we talk about Asia, not all the Asian countries are the same. Same as goes for Africa. Africa, don't all the nations are not the same. Some of them have infrastructure who is strong, not many, but some of them, and the education system is really good. And in many ways, football would struggle that because everybody sees, okay, I can go through the education system and get a better job. But in some of the poorer countries where you have street football still and not the best infrastructure, there is this drive. I have to go. I have to go from the poverty or the condition I'm living in. So I think that I think that sometimes if the education system is really good in countries like some of them in Africa or Asia, it it is an obstacle. It's a big obstacle for football. But maybe if you could combine this, like Japan have done really well with that, combine the education with the football. Um, have they have even academies inside the FA? You can do this, but there is a reason that if we take Icelandic players, I think the drive in Iceland, you live on an island, it's very dark during the winter. It's like 5 or 6 months of darkness, and you really want to go to see the world, and you want to come back and tell stories. And because we have every year players going, and the system, the machine and the youth setup in Iceland is pumping out players, the players think, because everybody knows everybody, it's like Gylfi Sigurðsson is going, okay, I'm going to go also. I'm going to do like him. This is lacking in Hong Kong. We have 3, 4 extremely good players who would need to be transferred to the Japanese league, Korean league, or big leagues in Europe, like players who are 16, 17, 18, 19 years old. And then other kids see, I want to go. I want to do like he's doing. But we don't have that in Hong Kong yet.
No, definitely, I agree. Like I don't know, like how much percentage. Like I agree totally with you. Like because like I don't know about again Hong Kong, but I'll give you an example of India. Like in India, from the perspective of the parents, okay, you do engineering or medical, you have a path there for you, which probably not everyone, but someone can follow. Like you have like maybe with the CEO of Google, a CEO of Yahoo, those people have already gone through the same system, but you don't
Yeah,
have that maybe like in Premier League. Okay, there is no one from India playing in
yeah,
Premier League.
yeah,
Probably
exactly.
there is,
Yeah,
you cannot do
yeah,
that. I think that is
yeah,
the mindset.
yeah, definitely. And this just becomes a tradition. It's a really good example. It can be like we have had in Asia so many Korean golf players on the women's side. It was like top 100 like 20 years ago. All of a sudden, they were like five. And then 5 years later, they were 20. It's just like you see something. Okay, I'm going to copy. I'm going to copy this player. The role models are so important. And in a small country like Iceland, they're very visible. Um, and we see this, of course, with the English Premier League. The problem there, of course, is that for the local player, for the English local player, because the league has so much money, they can bring all the talent outside England. That means it's extremely difficult for an English player to get into the starting lineup in the Premier League. So it's not always the same to have a really strong league and have a good national team. And England now, they have found the balance. They're doing well and they're producing more young players. But if we go 10, 15 years back in time, they were underachieving.
No, but I yeah, that you make sense. But I don't think so. England are still producing that good talents like maybe Iceland. Like what I feel, my point of view is like uh English players need to go outside England to
Yeah,
maybe become a bigger
yeah,
talent, and that has been like maybe you can see like Jadon Sancho who has gone there, or many other people who have gone there. Like outside maybe in Bundesliga, and they have
yeah,
maybe come back
yeah,
as maybe a better prospect. Even if you take the example of not English but Pogba, he had to go
yeah,
to Juventus to become a player, and like the French team which won the World Cup, not many played in the French league. Like
yeah,
they were playing
yeah,
all
yeah,
across
yeah,
Europe.
yeah. Yeah, you're totally right. If you just, it doesn't matter which country it is. It's like, take Iceland, for example. 6, 7 years ago, you stopped seeing any players who were playing in the local Icelandic league in the national team group of 24 players. They didn't get in. Everybody knew that he needed to go to play at a higher level to be able to get into the team because the team was getting better and better and better. This, of course, applies for the smaller leagues. If we take small countries like football countries, that is, India, Hong Kong, and these countries, they need their players to go abroad to come back with information to make everything better. And this is like Sweden. I mean, imagine the effect Zlatan had on the Swedish national team. Zlatan went to Paris Saint-Germain. He brought all the ideas from the sports science manager. He basically ran the Swedish national team for many years. He came with all the ideas they were doing on fitness or whatever, technology, and so on. So it's a bit different with if we take Germany, Italy, Spain, and England because these are the top leagues. So you can get away with playing in your home league. Although I agree with you, English players have not uh, played outside England many times and done well. Not many of them have, but they have now. What they changed, I think it's like 15 years ago. They stopped playing in the youth national teams. They were always playing Iceland, Norway, Northern Ireland, Ireland, and they started playing Brazil, Spain, in the youth teams. So they just played against the best. They just spent a lot of money on the youth national teams, and there's a huge difference in English youth national teams now than 15 years ago. They're tactically much better because I thought the English youth teams were weak tactically, but now they can switch between two or three systems and so on. So it all comes to philosophy, right? Because where are we going and how are we going to get there? So we, for example, in Hong Kong, we know where we're going, but we still don't have the tools to get there because you need money. You need the right tools to do it. And I think many of the smaller nations, they want to go to the World Cup. They're all aiming for it. But do you have the tools to do it? Does Nepal, India, or the Maldives, or Singapore, or the smaller nation, do they have the tools? No, I'm not sure.
Definitely. And for us, at least in Nepal, at least we have maybe India, where first of all, you don't require a visa to go, you just require passport. So it's like European Union, like how you don't require, so even for Nepal and I think India, we don't require. So you can go there. And I think the league there is developing well. So
Yeah,
for
yeah,
us,
yeah, yeah. Of
for
course.
now, at least at this table, at this stage where Nepal is right now in terms of football, in where they, in its own history, where it is, I think the immediate that India is of course a very good step right now for them to go, and Premier League, it's not, it's not something to be considered right now, which
Yeah,
even in the
yeah,
wildest dream.
yeah. I saw the Indian women's team play 2 years ago, and I was shocked how good they've become. So I started asking around. And this is because Indian FA had spent money and had philosophy and a way to make the players better. They've been playing with boys and they just gave them the tools. So in many cases, if we think about women's football, the reason, if we go back to Iceland again, why Iceland have been doing really well in women's football, because we care about women's football. Many of the bigger nations don't care. So, so I was really happy to see the Indian team, how much they have progressed in recent years. But this is something, first, we want to do something with women's football, and then you're giving the tools to improve the team and the players afterwards.
Definitely. And there one thing, like you touched on a very important thing. Even Nepal's women's team is very good. I won't be shocked if I see Nepal's women's team qualify for a World Cup before a men's team. Like in
Yeah,
terms of where they are in their respective game, like like, so that part, yeah, I don't know. Like for some reason, the women's team just turned out to be good. You have like good players, and I think that's something maybe probably maybe the FA have done correctly some way or the other. I don't know how, but they have done it correctly. But they are not able to replicate it on the men's game for some reason.
yeah. Mhm.
So yeah, so we'll move on. Like you said, like how everyone wants to play in World Cup. but probably you cannot, because probably you don't have tools, or probably in
Yeah,
terms of your footballing knowledge you are many years behind, or whatever, like whatever be the reason. Like, how much of it boils down to the money that is available? Maybe because if you provide good money to maybe the players, then probably more parents will, like, have their children come and play football.
yeah,
Or
yeah,
maybe you have more money to buy the equipments. How much is that down to money? Because you have seen it in Iceland, and now you
yeah,
are in Hong Kong. What do you
yeah.
think on that topic?
Good question. I think the first thing is infrastructure. So if we think about the nations in football who are struggling, they are struggling mainly because they don't have infrastructure. And infrastructure means grassroots football first. It means youth league football, good quality of games and the youth. And then when you come to the senior team, if you're a small nation and the league itself in your country is not strong, then you need to get your players to a better league. And if you look at some of the undeveloped countries who are doing well in football, both in Africa and Asia, you will see that the level the players are playing is pretty high. And they might have, the coaches are even not living in that country. Take, for example, Africa, because the best players are playing in Europe, then the coach is in Europe to follow the players all over the place. So that is the aim. I mean, the tools you have in each country is the competition. It's really important that you have quality games, demanding games for the youth, and then the league itself. If it's not strong enough, then you need to play young players. Let's say if we take, let's say Indian league, it's maybe ranked number 50 in the world or whatever. If you're going to create players who can play later in the Premier League, then India needs to push 17, 18 years old players to play in the Premier League in India. So by doing that, they are getting really good games, and then they could be moving to a stronger league when they're 19 or 20. So this is in many cases the European model. You have selling clubs. So you have clubs who don't have a lot of money, but they put the young players pretty early into the system. They have homegrown players, and it's just a fact. I think it was 2 years ago. There was I took the 50 best players in the world. So it was a magazine who selected the 50 best players, and I went to Wikipedia and found out when they played their first senior team game, and 49 of them played between 15 and 19, the first senior team game. The level did not matter. It's like it could be second division, but it was a strong link between getting senior team football very early to become a top player.
Definitely. And like, you mentioned, like, having a strong league is important to have a thing. What do you define a strong league as?
Uh, how can you, let's say, okay, I'm not gonna, because we get tired of talking always about the best five leagues,
Hmm.
the English, German, and all that. So I would say, how can you do it? So let's say if we continue talking about India or China. Let's take inland India and China, because China and India, both of them have tried to bring in extremely talented players from abroad. And if you take China, in the beginning when China started, they wanted big names to advertise the league. So what they did, they got players who were names, definitely, but all of them were going down. They were too old. They were 35, 6, 7 years old. They came for quick money, and the league did not become better. What they did after that was bringing in players like Oscar and Hawk, who were like top age, 26, 27, even 25. Of course, getting really good contracts, making the league better, making the players around them better, and taking the Chinese local players higher up. This is the way you increase the quality of your league. And this is the same as in Iceland or Hong Kong or India, it doesn't matter. you will have foreign players. If there are too many, it will weaken the league and your national team. If the balance is right and the players are strong, they will improve the local players and improve the league. So, but this is a thin line how you do this. It's a really thin line how to do this right and wrong. But definitely, it's not the right way to bring only players to your country who are fading, who are just physically, uh, slower because players get slower the older they get, and this can boost the league. This has happened I think in Hong Kong. The best example is they got Diogo Forlan to come to play. Yes, he was old, but he gave everything. The crowd came. There's more crowds on the game, and players, of course, improve themselves playing with these players. But I think the Chinese Super League is the best example. They were bringing players in at the beginning who did not change the league. But when Oscar and Hawk and these players came, Dembele still here, it was just the league became much better.
No, no, yeah, agree with that. And I have two questions to that. First is like you said, Chinese Super League is like a very good example for getting foreigners, just for the sake of getting foreigners. Maybe like
Yeah,
big
exactly,
names.
exactly.
Even if, I think even the Indian Super League is has been like guilty of that. I think they got Roberto Carlos
Yeah,
when he had
definitely,
retired. I think 7 years
definitely.
ago, or
Yeah,
when they got someone
yeah,
like Pires when he had not played a game for maybe 4 5 years. So yeah, I
yeah,
think like.
yeah. I think India just went for the same model in the beginning as China in the beginning, but better now.
But don't you think like that is required to maybe stamp your mark, okay, just to get sponsored, like okay, this is something serious, or no, they wouldn't take it serious to begin with.
I think this is very easy to sit here and judge. Maybe in the beginning you need a big name to open the ears of the public and the sponsors. You know, I'm not saying it's all bad. This is just like a development. In the beginning, you take big names in, Carlos Tevez, Eidur Gudjonsson, and all that, and everybody, wow, they're going to China. But what they have been doing, at least now, is you're getting the second layer. It's like, I mean, I went to the Chinese Super League 1.5 years ago and saw Evergrande play, and and they were like there was like 5 or 6 top players on the pitch, and I could see the Chinese players were gaining from it. It's just totally different to play with these quality players. They were really fit and also had the quality to improve, take the games higher. And they even have been bringing in top referees to China. So I think they've done really well. Although now, because the problem in China now is that it's been played in a bubble last season, and it's really difficult for the players, especially the foreigners, to stay in a hotel for 4 months. I don't think that the locals, the Chinese, are going to complain about it, but many of the coaches have struggled with this. Like Benitez is leaving and all that. But I think that yeah, like you said, India also began taking players who definitely were finished, and but they're taking more quality in now. It's a good sign.
No, definitely, because the reason I said that is because suppose if I'm a Brazilian 20-year-old who wants to pursue career in football, and
Yeah,
I see okay, Roberto Carlos has gone to India, or Zico has also coached in India for 2 3 years. I mean,
yeah,
those are not big names in India; those are big names in Brazil as in themselves.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So it wouldn't be like something to be looked down upon if a new 20-year-old who goes to India. It's like okay, even Roberto Carlos came here. So maybe I think they went with that model and to make the league bigger.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean it's so much about promotion. I mean I'm not an expert in that, but at least we can see the examples of Indian the philosophy behind the Indian Super League and the Chinese Super League are very similar. It's the aim is to increase the interest of the public in football. Definitely, that's the number one. So so at least it's moving in the right direction.
Definitely, definitely. And like another thing I want to touch upon is about I wanted to speak to Emma Hayes, like maybe 8 months back, the Chelsea women's manager, and she recently turned down a Division Two club, I think, a men's team. And the question I wanted to ask was like, will we ever see a woman manager in a men's game first? And second of all is, why do we have so many men's manager in a women's game? Because if the
Yeah,
first one is not happening, why does the second
yeah.
one happen?
It's a very good question. I think that based on my experience, so I worked mainly in the men's game, but I also worked in the women's game. So in Iceland, many of the coaches have done both. Uh, my experience, it was really difficult. The football players on the men's side, after they finish playing football, they want to coach. Many of them want to coach. The same pathway is not on the women's side. That might be connected to having babies or other things. And maybe the MAs have not helped the players set up a pathway that you can have a baby and also have a pathway as a coach when you stop playing. So it's basically, you can say, is less developed, the infrastructure on the girls' side, although in Iceland we're really good at this. Um, so that's one. Uh, there is we have the stats. There are more men who follow football also, just in general, like in Iceland, who watch the news and watch the games and all that. Then there's also sexism. It's just I think that is and has been a big problem in football. There's like homophobia and sexism, racism, and the old dressing room like 30, 40 years ago, where the language there about gay people and about races, different races, and so on. So there's so many changes that have been in the last 34 years. It's like the training method. So when I'm playing, the main fitness training was like punishing the players. So if you don't do this, you're gonna run. If you don't do this, you're gonna do push-ups. This has changed a lot for the better. And then there's the language that was spoken. And I think many of us coaches who've been coaching for a long time feel guilty how we spoke 20 years ago, 30 years ago about women, about homosexual people, and so on. So I think now there is room for women to start coaching men. I think there is. I think there is a lot of clubs are doing really well on the women's side. They're spending money. In the last 2 years, players have been sold for money from Iceland to clubs in France and Germany and so on. Um, the women themselves are demanding more. So they have finally, in my opinion, put the bar higher themselves. So they are outspoken about if the coaches are not good enough, if the clubs are not doing well enough for them, and so on. So I think we can see that happen. But still, football in general is a very cruel world. So it's a lot overturned. If we take Asia, you have coaches staying in the job for 3 months or 6 months. My job, so the technical director's job, on average, you stay in the job for 12 months in an MA in Asia. So it's not a stable job. And I think it's easier for men to take that route. And again, I will talk about the family, because although things have changed a lot, I think women are still the number one parent, so to speak. I hope it doesn't sound sexist to say that, but even in Iceland, it's been when people divorce, it's really difficult for the husband, the man, to get more access to the children. So if there's one thing that favors women, that is the mother's right. So this is, of course, connected to if a woman, we have women coaches who have sacrificed everything for the football coaching career. Not many, but we still have. But they, in these cases, would need support from their husband then. But in most cases in Iceland, that it's the husband who wants to be a football coach, and you're coaching on difficult hours, on weekends, and so on. And you need the support from your partner to make the family work, I think. So to answer the questions, I think now finally we have the growth, the social skills of people to respect that a woman can definitely coach man and do a really good job.
Definitely, and I hope so it changes. But I don't, on a personal, I don't really see it changing very anytime soon. It may take 1 2 generations more before you see the change. Like maybe it's just something like I don't know. It's just something you cannot. I support Liverpool, and I cannot see Liverpool going out of the way to being the first pioneer to be, like, bringing a women's job for whatever reason they may have. Maybe right, maybe wrong. I don't know, but I can't see one person doing it. But whoever does it will be the first, like setting the path, and it might be difficult
Yeah,
path also. But if I mean, like, there are too many stakeholders to buy into that decision, and the first
yeah,
one will always be difficult.
yeah. I know that. I mean, the biggest change is happening now. The women's are starting to coach the girls and the women more. So that comes from FIFA and UEFA, and they are setting rules. So it's much easier for a women, a good coach today, to get a job on the women's side. And to be honest with you, because we can criticize men for being sexist and behaving badly through the football industry for a long time, but let's not forget that men have also driven women's football. There's a lot of good people who have driven women's football through the years. But finally now, because this needs to come from the government body, this needs to come from FIFA and UEFA, and now they are setting rules where it needs to be women involved with the under 17s, under 90s, and so on. So it's happening. So I agree with you. It might take 2 generations to switch to the men's club having women's coaches. The first step is definitely we have women coaching the top women's team. Although I also think that it shouldn't be forbidden to have men's coaches, but we need definitely more women's coaches and referees. It's the same. I mean, working in a club, it doesn't matter if Iceland, Hong Kong, or whatever. It's extremely difficult to find women who want to be referees, even doesn't matter women's or men's game. So so there are two sides to this. Definitely, what I think now society is ready because people are showing women more respect in regards to football. I'm still shocked about how the public in Hong Kong look at women's football because it's so different from Iceland, and it's like going, like I said earlier, 20, 30 years back in time. But we're trying everything we can. I have a really good women's manager who is basically first and foremost fighting for human rights, and then it's the football side.
Definitely, and like, you spoke on the referee front. I think the most improved part, I think, is in the referees front, where women's have even gone on. I
Yeah,
think in terms of maybe even playing or even maybe being a manager, at least in referees point, they have been very good. And you said like it's difficult to find women being a referee. I think it's very much difficult to find men also being involved to go on to be a referee. I think referee these days, you may criticize them, but it is a tough job, and not many
yeah,
want
yeah,
to
yeah,
do it.
yeah. It's not the. I mean, you don't go into football when you're 10 years old to become a referee.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. So, like another, maybe like you touched on, maybe not fully, but you touched on sexism and how it's prevalent maybe in various different societies that you have been in, and maybe not seen it directly, but maybe seen. I mean, it's not very clear, but it might be, like, it's a very underlying tone maybe in many societies that you would have seen, and probably maybe even in Nepal when you would have come. Like it's not beyond the realms of reality. So another, maybe the other uh, thing that is discussed here, and especially recently also with a lot of, I think, Premier League being the first to have sent a letter to maybe the social media companies, I think Twitter and Instagram, to maybe block or maybe find out people about racism, those who are involved in
yeah,
racism.
yeah.
So what is your take on it, because you have traveled a lot of places?
I think that a lot of young coaches, because when you're young, especially when you're working with teenagers, so teenagers are different. They're not men or women, and they're not kids. They're teenagers. So they often say they make a lot of mistakes. They say things out spontaneously. It could be homophobic, it could be racist, but they don't mean it. Many of the coaches who teach or coach teenagers, they zoom in when they're coaching. They don't zoom out. So when you're young, you get stuck in the moment and you might take part in this. And this could be, you could be listening to music, um, some rap music, and you could be with white players and colored players. And to be sure, I'm not even sure what for example, what I can call players. I mean, who are colored. I mean, many people struggle with that. In America, it's easy, it's African American, but you cannot say that in Iceland or in Hong Kong. So anyway, you have a coach who maybe takes part in something that both parties, the white players or the colored ones are doing, and everybody's fine with it. He's just having fun, and the lyrics in the song are maybe could be considered uh, offend people, but still everybody is fine with it. 3 months later, you might have a football game against a big game, and one of the colored boys is on the bench for the first time in 3 months. He might then decide to go to the president of the club and say, hey, the coach was taking part, we were singing a song, and he was saying saying some racist comments in the song, and going along with everything. And this is becoming so difficult, especially for coaches who are not experienced, that there is this individualism with people. In football, there's so much money involved, there's so much at stake. You are ready to sell out your teammates. And the best example is at the top level, almost none of the coaches will let the players know the starting 11 until 1 hour before the game. If you let the players know one day before, the players who are unhappy not be starting, they will leak the team into the opponents or the media, or they will even tell the opponents about the plan. So I don't envy coaches who are, the young coaches who are working with young people today. You need to be very careful. Social media, all communication between on WhatsApp or Facebook or whatever. You need to be very careful what you're saying. And you could be absolutely, there is no racist thinking in you, but you still could be sitting with the board, the football board of the club, and they would be sacking you for being a racist. And and no, you didn't mean to offend anybody racially. So I think it's really difficult. There's a lot of changes.
No, no, I get what you say 100%. And I think like it's just the very fact, like I think for me, what racism, what I can understand by whatever experiences I have maybe seen or lived through, I think racism is not being maybe calling you black, white, or whatever, but maybe
Yeah,
like denying you an opportunity because of your skin color, or deny
yeah,
you
yeah,
an opportunity because of that, or looking down upon you because of something, not
yeah,
someone calling you. I think same thing issue happened, I think, against PSG versus Istanbul, where the referee was said to be racist, but now I think
yeah, 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 yeah,
UEFA have dismissed the case, saying it was not racist comment,
yeah,
and they
yeah,
have so I mean like it's you can't entirely remove the word. I think it's like more of, I think like, I think it's just education more that needs to
Yeah,
be there.
exactly. You came to the point. The school system, this needs to start earlier. I mean, the school system in general in the world is worn out. If I go back to Iceland, there is we struggle a lot with boys. They're not able to read. I mean, they're struggling a lot with reading. And for me, with all the time we spent in school, 8 hours a day, why isn't there a class early on about social skills, how to respect, the other gender, and about these issues? So, because communication, it's all about communication today. You might be getting a good job without having any education because you're really good in communication. So I think you're totally right. This is all about education, not only within the football class, because maybe you're getting the players in when they're 14 or 16. That's too late. You need to start the education with the kids from they're 6 or 7 or 8 years old about social skills. Definitely.
Definitely, definitely. So, like, we are close to an hour mark, so we'll wrap it up with two more questions. Like, I don't take much of your time. It already might be close to seven there, like in Hong Kong.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. So we'll wrap it up with two final questions. And, the first one is, you have been with Hong Kong, like you said, for a while now. What has, according to you, been your biggest achievement when you have been at a time there?
I think the two things I'm proudest of. The one thing is that we set up a youth club license system for the boys academies with funding from the government. So it means that we will have a league with the best teams playing, and we will have subsidy for the teams who have the certain educations in place for the coaches, for the assistant coaches, for the goalkeepers. For they need to have a head of the academy in place. So we have basically taken the club license system that is like in the Champions League and the AFC, and we have put it into the youth. And this is like the machine. So when everybody sees, okay, we need to send the coaches to the courses, we need to have all these things in place. The quality will improve a lot. I would say in 3 to 5 years. It doesn't matter. Okay, you can monitor it, but basically by setting the bar high, setting the standards, they will reach it in 3 to 5 years. So I'm really proud of that. I think that um, the other thing is we managed to put women's football in the elite part in the strategic plan. So it was a bit of a fight. So me and the women's manager and the CEO, who was then at the FA, we wanted to have the women's football taking it from grassroots, the elite part, the national teams, and put it into the elite parts. And we managed to do that, and also futsal, because we think that futsal is very important in Hong Kong culture because you have a lot of small-sided pitches, and we also think that futsal played at the national team level, at the highest level, is elite. So I think that was like it's a bit like fighting for human rights. So I didn't understand why did you want to put futsal and women's football in only in the grassroots? Of course, some of the girls' football is in grassroots, some of the boys' football is in grassroots, but there's no difference between a top player at women's futsal or the man's football side. So I think that is what I'm proudest of.
Definitely. So, like on that note, we'll wrap it up with one final question. And, like, you have experienced a lot, and you have experienced, like, you are coming from a place, like you said, where probably the infrastructure is unrivaled, or what is unrivaled to any in the world, in terms of what education you get in Iceland. You have spent a lot with the youth over there, and also the women's game. And you have also experienced Hong Kong of late with what you have done. And if you had to give a piece of advice to a young coach who's just starting out with your experience, what advice would you give?
I think the first advice would be set down his goals, his pathway. Why is he in football? What is your philosophy? How, what kind of football do you want to play? And focus on like being a youth team coach. If you're gonna do that, focus on that. If you're gonna be a first team coach, okay, how are you going to get there? So basically, put everything on a piece of paper and do the pathway. That's very important. Secondly, like I mentioned before, times have changed a lot. You cannot say the things coaches said 50 years ago, 30 years ago, even 10 years ago. Uh, you cannot do things that you did 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And I think that is really important to set certain communication rules within your group because you're also dealing with parents and communication with them, and they can also be tricky. So decide, okay, this is my role as a coach. This is the communication we have between with the players and with the parents, and set a like a very strict line with certain rules. Social media, for example, also it's very important. So I think that is in I think that's the most important thing for young coaches.
Definitely. And like on that note, thought, thank you so much for speaking to me, and I wish you all the best for your endeavors at Hong Kong. You hope you can grow the game more there, and hope you can have players all across the world from your time there. And
Thanks a lot.
hope to see you in Nepal someday, maybe for another visit. Probably, I don't
I'm
know.
definitely coming back to Nepal. It's my favorite place outside Iceland. No
Uh,
question about it.
I think because the geography is quite similar. Maybe I don't know.
I thought it was a bit spiritual, Kathmandu. There's a certain vibe in the city. I love it.
Definitely. And like Thor, thank you so much once again for coming, and hope to talk to you again soon. Till then, take care, stay safe. Bye.